According to a recent survey by Tinder, we are in the midst of a dating renaissance, which is led by Gen Z, who, it says, are challenging the dating norms that have been passed down to them. But is this dating renaissance working for everyone? I would suggest emphatically not. Now, as a married man, I have not been on any dating apps in quite some time, but I have seen data that suggests that young men in particular are having less sex than ever before. This doesn't sound like the kind of dating renaissance I would want to be a part of. But in order to prove my assertions, I decided to do a bit of research and see what I could find on this so-called dating revolution. So the first thing that I found was a research paper by the British Sociological Society, which argues essentially that dating apps have become a kind of large marketized economy in which individuals are acting as brands within that economy. So they are encouraged to be entrepreneurial. They're encouraged to treat themselves as marketers and to put themselves out there in a very similar way that you or I might think about a marketing campaign for a big business. The paper says that dating culture replicates the logic of a brand-intensive market whereby choices are made on the basis of expectations of future behavior that are uncertain and volatile. It's a marketized version of romance. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like if you think about the skills that it takes to create your profile and to secure a date on an app like Tinder or Hinge, actually a lot of the skills you're using are the very same ones that marketers would use in their daily lives. So things like securing social proof to prove that you are a legitimate business, having friends in your photo. It's the same thing. It's showing people that you are you have status and that you have trust as an entity. Things like writing enticing copywriting. This is something that marketers do every day, and it's something that Tinder profiles have to be adept at securing. Essentially, what you're doing with the whole process is building a marketing funnel. So when we talk about a marketing funnel, what we're really saying is at the top of the funnel, you've got a high degree of awareness, lots and lots of impressions of people, but not a great degree of trust or interaction. As you move down the funnel, you have more and more interaction, whereas at the bottom, you have what we call in marketing a conversion, which would be a sale. Now, you can see how this transfers over into the dating market economy. You have lots of impressions, which are just your swipes, people swiping yes or swiping no. They don't really have any great degree of interaction with you. As they start reading, and as they start messaging with you, that's moving through the funnel. And then the conversion is, well, let's call it a date, shall we? So you can immediately see how this paper is probably onto something. We are talking about a marketized economy, and we are talking about exchanges of essentially value in likes. Now, in most industries, technology drives optimization and it drives efficiency, and this is usually a very good thing. It means that we are able to have a choice from a plethora of different providers of things that we need, and we're able to find the ones that can best suit our requirements and pay them for their services. And this kind of recursive competition and this market economy drives improvements in goods and services. This is capitalism. We know what this is. But in the dating market, it's my contention that this is a disastrous dynamic, because there are things about market economics that you do not want in your dating market. To understand why that is, we have to think carefully about how markets work and about one principle in particular, and that is the Pareto principle. So this is the mathematical rule or rule of thumb, which says that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. Now, in business, what you hear people talking about is that 80% of sales come from 20% of customers. Now, this is often true. Anecdotally, I'm sure many of you watching will understand that often a very large degree of your revenue as a business does come from a small proportion of your customers. They're the most engaged ones. They're the ones that trust you most, and they're the ones that want to invest their time, energy, and of course money in the services that you're providing. Well, guess what? On Tinder, we find this same principle playing out in the numbers. So 20% of the men have essentially their choice of 80% of the women. That's to say 80% of the women are competing over the top 20% of men. Now, the reverse here is also true. The bottom 80% of men are competing for just the bottom 20% of women. you can immediately see how this is not a great dynamic when you play it out at scale, because it means that you have a lot of disenfranchised men. And you see this in the data on interactions, on likes, and on message rates. This data has been replicated almost exactly on Hinge as well. That suggests that it's not just about the one particular app in Tinder, but it is actually to do with these market forces that are at play on the population. The Gini coefficient is a way that economists can understand levels of inequality amongst populations. So it's most often applied to countries where a Gini coefficient of 1 is a catastrophically unequal country. That is to say, one person has all of the money and nobody else has any. A Gini coefficient of 0 is a perfectly equal society where everybody has exactly the same amount of money or resources or whatever it may be. Typically, we're talking about money. Now, there's a really great blog which has transposed this kind of data analysis onto the dating market on Tinder and on Hinge. They're using likes as the currency with which to play out a Gini coefficient. And here's what they found. The Gini coefficient for straight males on Hinge is 0.542. This would place Hinge as having more wealth inequality than 93.5% of countries in the world. Tinder is even worse at 0.58, making it more unequal than 95.1% of countries in the world. These are, as the kids say, mad numbers. Now, there's a whole load of this kind of analysis in the blog, which I will share in the notes. I'm not going to go into all of the details here because I don't just want to completely rip them off, but it's a really great blog and it's got a lot of this kind of detailed information. I would recommend you read it. But for now, what I want to do is extend my analogy a little bit further and to talk about that market economy that we found in the first paper that I discussed. If you want to extend this further, so from the extremely unequal world of dating into the market that's left behind. So what you've essentially got is a huge market for men who are unable to get likes and engagement on dating apps. That's because, as we've discussed, they are competing for a very small proportion of the women. The majority of the men are competing for a very small proportion of the low-ranked women, because most of the women want to go for the very top echelons of the male population, i.e. the top 20%. So what happens in market economics when there is a large addressable market which has no supplier? Well, enter OnlyFans. So Tinder launched in 2012 but didn't really start getting popular until 2014 to 2016. OnlyFans launched in 2016 and it has been all too happy to hoover up the 80% block of men out there who are searching for some kind of intimate relationship. What we essentially have is supply and demand. We have a huge addressable market of demand for female intimacy, and supply is now limited. So it warrants a premium, which means you have to pay to access any kind of intimate relationship with a good-looking woman on an app. So the next incentive now from a business point of view is to reduce the cost of supply, and from a marketing standpoint, it's to increase personalization. And that, my friends, is where AI porn comes in. So I've already done a video about AI porn, about the high degree of hyper-personalization that this is going to allow, that AI is going to allow businesses to create and to distribute, and the risks I think that poses to our society. So I won't go into all of it here. Suffice it to say that I do feel like there is a big market there, which OnlyFans is now addressing, which AI is going to start addressing very soon, if not already. Now, I'm sure many of you will say that it was ever thus, that this has always been the case. Female preferences haven't changed. Singles were always entrepreneurs to some degree, and we're always marketing ourselves, we're always selling, etc. I do have some sympathy for that point of view, but I do also feel like the difference is in the scale. We have never played this experiment out on such large numbers of people across such massive populations, and we don't know what's going to happen. We've never run the experiment with this volume of interaction before. It's always in the past been limited by real life options in real life are not infinite. In fact, they very much are finite. And so people had to make decisions, they had to make sacrifices, they had to prioritize. Now, the pool of potential mates is, for all intents and purposes, infinite. And so we don't now have to make those kinds of sacrifices, choices, prioritizations, and decisions. And so the numbers are just allowed to play out at massive scale. And so the law of large numbers says that eventually we will get to the expected value if we run the numbers enough times. And it turns out that there is quite a clear rule in the numbers as to how men and women interact. And I don't think that playing those numbers out over long periods of time, over a long period of time, is going to be beneficial to us as a species. On top of that, I think more loneliness is just generally bad for society as a whole. As I say, I'm married, but I do care about this stuff because, I think individual loneliness is sad. I also think it has big knock-on effects on our society. It affects, it literally affects people's mental health, but also just overall quality of life. And there is also data that shows that economic growth can be impacted. Some studies have shown that countries with higher levels of male loneliness tend to have lower levels of economic growth compared to those where male isolation isn't as prevalent. This is not good. This is not what we want. We want a country full of entrepreneurial, go-getting men who are building stuff and making the world turn. That's what we want. One final interesting stat from the Tinder survey said that around 34% of respondents said they were happy for GPT to write their profiles for them. Now, this raises an interesting question. Are we going to get to a stage in the near future where basically all of our dating app profiles are created by AI and perhaps image generated by AI, certainly filtered by AI? Then we're just going to have lots of chatbots all talking to each other about a date, and then eventually people will go and meet in real life, and then they'll have to make quite interesting decisions over whether they actually want to engage with this person or not. We might find ourselves in a world where the AI is doing all of our high level, top of funnel interaction for us, and then eventually when we get down to the bottom of funnel conversion stage, we go back to being human beings again. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, that's it from me for this week. I will see you next time. Please do leave a comment in the comment section if you have any thoughts on anything I've just discussed. See you next time.